Welcome back to the Stop Doing Stupid Stuff podcast. Join your hosts, Andreas Wieman and Tim Keefe, as they tackle the crucial and ever-evolving issues of employee engagement and workplace experience. This episode explores the intricate dynamics that define today's workplaces, examines the indispensable role of accurate data in crafting effective leadership strategies, and discusses actionable ways to boost employee well-being. Andreas and Tim will also address common misconceptions that hinder progress in employee satisfaction and productivity. Plus, don't miss the details on our upcoming LinkedIn Live event on September 19th, 2024, where we'll engage live with experts from various industries. This interactive session is set to offer valuable insights and strategies to enhance your organization's employee experience. Listen in to know more.
Hey everybody, welcome to another fabulous Stop Doing Stupid Stuff podcast with my co-conspirator and cellmate, Tim Keefe. Tim, what are we going to be talking about today?
I'm a little nervous about the whole cellmate thing. Co-conspirator I can deal with, but cellmates, ugh. No, thanks. Thanks, Andreas. It's always great to be here. What I wanted to talk about today was, as you and I have been talking for several years, employee engagement, employee well-being, employee experience is, there's just a drumbeat of growing acknowledgement that this is a really critical issue, that we've got to get organizations of all different types recognizing that the relationship between employees and the companies they work for, or the not-for-profits they work with, has changed dramatically. And and some of the things that were done, even more when they weren't done very effectively, don't work. So the good news is there's a recognition of importance, and there's a lot of great content being developed. You do a 2-second search in Google or YouTube or whatever. In fact, just earlier this morning, I was doing a YouTube one, and there's some really great videos and TED Talks on this topic. Wonderful, right? I guess it's the first thing that you have to do is recognize you have a problem. The challenge I'm seeing is that how do we move from these strategic academic discussions about the problem to turning that into ways that we can actually solve the problem or improve the outcomes? Do you see where I'm going with this?
So instead of the current environment right now where you see this really cool, celebrity saying, hey, you gotta go do this. And then you're like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Let's go do that. And then the difference is you see an idea, a theoretical idea, right? Or how do you actually go do it? To boil it all down, I cut a lot out. I'm simplifying it very, very largely here. How do you actually go do it? And it's not so much that it's one 30,000 foot view or vanilla view of here's what you should do. You should take care of your employees. Who the hell is sitting around, and I do think there's some, who the hell is sitting around saying, these employees, they're just lucky they get a paycheck. Let's foosball party and pizza party. Who's seriously sitting around thinking about this and not genuinely thinking about their employees? The problem is, if you guys have looked at my LinkedIn, I'm very dry humor, sarcastic, smart ass, right? But it hasn't exactly been easy for leaders to come in and actually look at data, not just BS, but look at data points that inform them of how their employees feel and how that correlates back to productivity and company success, defining success. So I know I give a lot of flack to leaders because straight up, there's a lot of terrible leaders out there. I'm not even going to shy away from that. I challenge anybody to challenge me on that. As a matter of fact, I'll have you on the podcast. We'll have a great discussion. But it really hasn't been easy because there's been so many different, software as a service applications or apps that, the Calm app. And I'm not knocking the Calm app, by the way, but how do you actually take something that has potential and operationalize it, put it in your operation so it has a good outcome from the employees, and then that's reciprocated back objectively through the company performance. And so what I, again, just explained is highly complex. I don't want to minimize that
Well,
whatsoever, but
but I think it's a really good point, because you sit there and you go, okay, if you're running a business, and some of us have had the privilege of doing that, and you're sitting there going, because there are things you think about every day, right? You think about your customers, you think about your products, you think about your go-to-market strategy, and unfortunately, a lot of times we just assume that the employees are engaged. We assume we're getting 100% engagement from them because I'm paying them, right? Like, and that's an assumption. And the flip side, and what we're seeing, is that assumption can kill you. We're just talking, and we mentioned it in a couple of podcasts now, that really powerful Gallup report that came out talking about employee engagement, whether you're a manager or a non-manager, and even more importantly, by region and country. And even the best are less than 50% engaged. Wow.
Yeah.
Excuse me? Like, that's like me finding out that my factory that's manufacturing widgets that I'm selling is only manufacturing 50% of the widgets. And maybe even 50% of those widgets aren't good, right? So therefore, I run the risk of returns and disappointed customers. Oh, wait a minute. That's exactly what's happening.
Right. But you're still first place. So you're celebrating your inefficiency by being in first place in your poorly produced, inefficient widget factory.
Well,
that's another problem into itself, though. Is the only thing pointing out.
That's if you're in first place. But look at what's happening. I mean, take a company like Starbucks, all right? And, I like coffee, and Starbucks is kind of the McDonald's of coffee. It's very predictable, and it's everywhere. I mean, literally everywhere. And they were number one for a long, long, long time, right? And guess what's happening? People are not buying, right? Like, I think they were down almost 10% in sales, and I could be wrong on that number, but it was significant. Right. And people are blaming it on the prices are higher, people have less money to spend, but they're also saying that the customer experience is starting to deteriorate. And I remember in 2010, and I'm going to date myself, right? That seems like a long time ago now. Starbucks in the US closed all their stores for a day, and to bring every employee in to train on customer experience, because it had gotten so bad that they were losing control over that experience. People would say, I didn't get the right drink or whatever, and people would argue with them. Yep. And that, they had to bring people in and say, look, in this particular situation, we have to recognize that it's in our interest that the customer leaves happy, right? And if we got the drink wrong, or they ordered it wrong and it's not what they expected, just with a smile say, thank you, let me make you what you need. Because at the end of the day, that's what matters. But my point was, like, as a business leader, I use that term carefully because I don't know that I'm a great leader sometimes, but as somebody who is responsible for a business, you do think about things every day. And one of the things that has to come to the top of the list, just like you would think about, is my factory performing? Do I have availability of products? Do I know who my customers are, et cetera? Has to be, where are my employees? Where are they in their engagement with me, their engagement in what we're doing, their engagement to support what we're doing? Because if they're not there, we're not going to get there. It's just that simple.
No, agreed. And staying on that, just real quick, what I think and again, this is where there hasn't been the best tools out there to allow leaders and executives of large, complex organizations, multifaceted verticals and towers, et cetera, to really look at everything holistically and objectively with empirical data. How can we gauge what's going on? It's been complete gut reaction and feel. And the thing, with the Gallup report was great because it showed, pretty key factors around stress, anger, sadness, worry, loneliness. Loneliness was a huge indicator, of I'm going to call it unhappiness. But really what you're trying to do with employee experience, and employee experience is everybody, not just the frontline workers, it's everybody. How do you figure out if you're a 10 people, veterinarian clinic versus a 100,000 people customer experience, solution provider to Fortune 500 companies, all of them, how do you figure out what makes them tick, what they're interested in? And if you look at, again, just looking at data, the generational data right now that we have, if you look at the baby boomer generation, the Gen X generation, which is roughly 40% of the total population in the US anyways, and then you look at I don't have it up in front of me, so I forgot exactly what everything was called. So I'm gonna I'm gonna missay.
No, you had millennial, you have Gen
Yeah,
X, you have millennial, you have Gen Z and Gen A, and
I
and
got
not
it.
only, yeah, and to your point, it's not only, you know, take a step back, and we always run the risk of, treating employees like they're fungible. In other words, that everybody
Right.
is the same, and they're not. Right. In fact, human beings are like exactly the opposite of that. They're snowflakes. Every single, I know it's a bad term, sorry, but every single human being
It's different.
is different in what they want, what they need, what they react to. And
Yeah.
the only way we know, and right, this is where you and I have been screaming for a couple of years, is that you can't use these like, oh, let's create our employee personas, and then we'll assume that, oh, Tim is a baby boomer, so therefore he's going to react these ways. Which every time I hear that, by the way, pisses me off, because I personally, I don't feel that way, because people
Right.
say, oh, you're all about analog. You want to wait on the call. You want to talk to somebody, and I'm going, yeah, no, that's not
Yeah.
true. Not for me anyway. So don't put me in that box and blah blah blah. But
Well, and that's the thing though, with the generational divide that's come up, or I shouldn't say divide, but the generational gaps in the technology and norms that were introduced and adopted at varying rates. Baby boomers adopted and were a part of something very analog, and so now it's more digital first now. So how has that transition occurred? And it's not just, okay, well, you're a baby boomer, so everything is true to baby boomers. Everything is true to Gen X. Everything is true to millennials and Gen Z and Gen A that's coming out, Gen Alpha. No, that's what no one in the world right now in business, right, has seen all of the variables that all of us are facing right now. Now, I'm a huge proponent of drawing on tenure in practical application and experience to learn from. Don't get me wrong, 100% with it. The thing is, the people that I'm asking their opinion on, they form their opinion based off of variables that are no longer in play. There's different variables that have been introduced. So how do we take all of this dynamic shifting changes that are in place today, social media and iPhones and that level of technology, and how do we take those solid fundamental ideas that frankly the book that we wrote, Stop Doing Stupid Stuff, the podcast we're doing right now, is all of the core concepts are in there. It's basically saying, here's how you can apply it. You got to figure out based off of the variables you're facing, your company is facing. You have to figure out how do you adopt these fundamental principles and systems with the variables you're facing right now.
well, and I think to stop doing stuff is really thanks for bringing it up again, because it is the fact that you walk into these organizations, or we do business with them, and you say, oh, like, when was the last time, or how often do you speak to your employee base? And we talked to a government agency a couple of months ago now,
Yeah.
beginning of July, and it was every 18 months. And you're like, but their attitude is like, well, it's a government job. People get these for lifetime. We don't really need to worry about it. And you're like, yeah, I'm not saying that people are leaving, right? But are people
Right.
really engaged and
Engaged.
performing? And the answer is we don't know.
And
And that's
the effort you're getting out of your people, is it a volunteered effort because they feel there's reciprocation from the company, the organization, in a personal benefit and interest in them as individuals? And if they do feel that, they have that feeling, guess what? That effort is measurable, by the way, but it's a volunteered effort. It's not a, all right, I'm going to give
well,
you as much as I can to fly under the radar so I don't get fired type of effort. That's where your
right.
40% production in the factory comes from.
Agreed. And it's you just see it everywhere, every day. I mean, it was on a long flight last night, with one of the major airlines. Won't name who they were, but and here I was flying. I paid the extra fee for a long flight, and I'm sitting in business class. And I mean, the engagement from the FAs was like, you could tell they didn't want to be there. You could tell that it was a real, it was just robotic. There was no real feeling of like I mattered, and not like, hey, it's a long flight. You just want to basically get on the plane, you know, be nice to me because I paid the extra thousands of dollars to sit up in front here, and then just leave me alone. And then when I wake up, get me a cup of coffee. But can you do it in a way where I feel like I matter? And that wasn't there at all. And yet, previous month, anyway.
To be fair, that's how I treat you as well. So.
Well, you're not alone. I think most of my family members treat me that way too. But that's I'm working on that. And you try to reciprocate because that's the other side of the coin. You don't want to be the jerk, right. And you want to be the person who can be, hey, it's okay, right? Like I'm here, and it's we can all as human beings exist in this nanosecond. I had a funny one because I was going through a TSA checkpoint in Kennedy Airport a couple of weeks ago, and the TSA, it was a young guy, and he had just had to deal with, how people can be that, they're lining up, they're kind of checked through, but they're not, and they're stacking up. And the guy's like trying to explain to him, no, there's two lines, like everybody feedback. And he turns around and I'm the next one. And I could tell he was just like really frustrated. And I just turned to him and I said, you know what? Just take a deep breath. And he looked at me and he was like, and then he did. He just took a deep breath. I said, okay, let's let it out. And he laughed and he goes, you just made my day. And for both of us, right? Like that could have been like an annoying experience, one more annoying experience.
You de-escalated. You de-escalated it. Yeah.
So I guess the point that we're trying to get at here is, you and I are in violent agreement on this, but we're trying to get this conversation out that employee engagement is not the bottom of the list of things you got to worry about. It's got to be in the top three, right? It's got to be what you wake up in the morning going, how engaged are my employees to do what I need them to do? That should be, man, if you want an alien on your face in the morning, that should be one of them. And then what are you doing about it? And checkbox items like, oh, we've got mental health covered. Everybody's got Calm, and you're like, to your point, I think Calm is a great application, but if it's not being used, if people aren't taking advantage of it, or it's not enough, that's a problem. Right. And then as you and I joke all the time, like the Valley companies where it was like foosball tables and climbing walls and beanbag chairs and espresso machines every 5 feet. By the way, I love that. That's a coffee.
I was going to say that I'm a proponent of. You're not going to get arguments out of me.
But it again, is that what is going to light people's fire to get them to do what that we want them to do, right? Which is to serve our customers in a way that drives revenue so that we can pay our employees, we can give our employees good jobs, et cetera. I just wanted to, I think it's a good time to lead to something else because, again, we could talk on this for a long time, but as we've been pointing out, there's a great conversation, right? More and more people are bringing this up, right? And there's more and more people offering what I would call academic or strategic or consultative opinions on what it means to do this. But then it's how do you do it? Like for a great one, I think is everybody says you need feedback. And that's like the hardest one, I think, because constructive feedback isn't always pleasant, right? And when you're the quote unquote boss, it can really suck when you find out that people think you do these things wrong, whatever it may be. And you're like, I don't do that. And yeah, you do. You're just not aware of it, right? And you have to be, by becoming aware of it, you can then do something about it.
Yeah.
So what we want to do, I think, is one, continue to expand on our Stop Doing Stupid Stuff library of things. We have some additional titles coming out end of this year and into next year that I think people are going to find valuable in different areas. Obviously, leadership and employee engagement is an underlying theme through all of that. But we also we're going to do an event on September 19th, which we're calling EX 2025, or Employee Experience in 2025 and beyond. The event is going to be all virtual. We know how hard it is for people to get time away and to spend time on this, and we want to make this valuable and available. So it'll be a virtual event. It's going to be 90 minutes of details. So we'll be putting more details out over the next couple of weeks. Look for the save the date in our LinkedIn profile for Transform CX, and in both Andreas and my personal profile as well. But just to give you a quick heads up on it, it's going to be a panel of 4 professionals. We're mixing that panel up between Chief Human Resources Officer for a very large organization that has, again, a widely diverse type of employee skill set across top to bottom. We also have a very senior organizational psychologist that works extensively with startups and the Silicon Valley VCs. We're going to have another senior executive operations person coming out of the healthcare space, and another senior executive operations person coming out of our, out of the contact center industry. So again, people with large experience with managing large numbers of people around delivering where lack of customer engagement has very, very specific negative outcomes. So just a heads up for people, the goal here is virtual session. We'd love to have you attend if you have, and we'll put out opportunities for people to pose questions ahead of time. We will take questions during the event, but as you know, that can be challenging depending on the number of people who attend. We see this as really necessary to move from this academic strategic conversation to creating practical, usable tools that we can apply in our organizations on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, and quickly, I'll add too. So it's about balancing out the employee experience and then the company's definition of success. So how do you symbiotically introduce balance between those two? Because, it's an employee experience revolution that we're kind of looking at, taking 2024 and ending that, and then using the beginning of 2025 as that jumping off point around alternate skilling, like how people engage and what the requirements are today versus some of the things that need some tuning and modernization. How do you deliver that? How do you figure that out? How do you figure out what people are interested in? And then how do you give them the training in a medium that's conducive so they take it quickly? And then if you're, that's employee focused, frontline employee focused. But then if you're an executive for all of these thousands, hundreds of thousands of employees, how do you measure it objectively to say, yep, now I'm upping my guidance for 2025 because my employees kick ass, they're happy, my shrinkage is down, profits are up, outlook is rosy, unlike what we're seeing right now,
And that's exactly the point. It has to become, you have to have a baseline. You have to have, and guess what? Not everything you do is going to work. This is the other thing, right? Like, don't make an assumption and don't just do a checkbox. You got to do it, measure it, validate that it accomplished what you wanted to do, and then either you double down on it or you move to something else. And so many companies don't. They just consider it done. They fired it off into the wind. We do an annual survey. We gave everybody calm. We're letting people work from home, 2 days a week or whatever. But is it working? I have no idea.
Did you get your company branded mug, Tim? Did you get your company branded coffee mug? All right, productivity is going to go through the roof. Everyone's going to be super happy.
Actually, I didn't, and I don't think it would matter for me, but that's all right. I think you're right on, and we joke about it. But again, I think this is a powerful conversation. We really need to think about how do we do this in a way that it's real and valuable to the employee, recognizing that every employee is different. Every employee is going to respond differently. And if I don't do it, you're going to fall behind. Unless your belief is I'm going to replace all my employees with AI tools. And again, that's a different conversation, but I don't think that's going to really get you there.
Right. Agreed.
All right. Well, Andreas, thanks again. As always, hopefully it'll let you out in the yard today for an hour of sunshine and fresh air. I lost my privileges for a month because you and I were talking through the bars, but that's okay. Anyway, no, it's great. And for everybody out there, thanks for listening. Really appreciate it. And if you have the opportunity to attend our EX 2025 event on September 19th, we'd love to have you there.
Yep, agreed. Thanks, everybody. Until next time.
Stop doing stupid stuff.
Trademark.